Darth Maul is an odd duck. Super duper iconic, but why? How? This character has basically no dialogue, basically no personality, definitely no arc, definitely no backstory. He is a scary face and a cool lightsaber. Is that really all there is to this character? Are you really gonna tell me that that's all it takes to be this iconic? That's it? No, I don't think so. I think there's more. So let's talk about it in this video that is brought to you by Squarespace. Okay, so topic one that we need to address before anything else, before getting to the whole question of the limitations, is just what Darth Maul was. What is this? What was this doing here? What purpose did this serve for the Phantom Menace story and for Star Wars at the time? Because this was a long time ago, and maybe some of you weren't alive or weren't conscious for this. You have freaking Gen Beta babies. But for those who were, for those of us who had for years watched the opening crawl go by and seen the words Episode 4, Episode 5, Episode 6, and we had to just sit and imagine what came before this. Within that imagining, there was this hole, there was this empty space in the original trilogy that I think all Star Wars fans felt on some level, conscious or unconscious. It was not that something was missing out of like negligence, it was intentionally because of what the original trilogy was that it could not have this. And what I'm talking about had to do with the fact that Jedi are just the coolest thing ever. But that said, the Jedi we had gotten so far were, I mean, they're great, but also it's not the best. And Luke he's also great, but he's a beginner. So I'm trying to express here is that as far as Jedi and Dark Jedi, there were no Sith back then, Dark Lords, Dark Jedi, what is the sum total of what we have, what we see? We got a past his prime old guy, and then this even more past his prime old guy who doesn't even use a lightsaber, and then we got a really new guy, and then this asthmatic gentleman, and then we have this other seriously kind of old guy. Granted, he had lightning, which was the absolute coolest thing ever, but the point is, light or dark, we did not get to see Jedi in their prime. And that's because Jedi weren't in their prime in this trilogy. That's understandable, that's how it was supposed to be. So in the context of that, now think about the prequels, because that was a major thing that back then we were all so excited about. It is hard to relate to that nowadays, because now most Star Wars media shows you Jedi and Dark Jedi in their prime, but not so back in the day. So then now what do we have? A Sith warrior trained to fight Jedi and kill them with his freaking double-bladed lightsaber. We have a Dark Jedi warrior in his prime. That was something we had never seen before. That felt incredible. It was beyond exciting to finally get that, to see them go all out with a level of cool Jedi stuff we had been dreaming about for years. So I think it's fair to say that that's what the character is, but now what's with all the rest of his bizarre lack of characterization and lack of development? So I did a thought experiment you should be familiar with if you're a longtime viewer of the channel. What if Darth Maul was just a default villain character? Still a fighter in his prime, but we stripped away everything else. No tattoos, no horns, no double-bladed lightsaber. Yes, a backstory, yes, a personality, yes, character development, give him lots of dialogue. And instead of Darth Maul, he was just Darth Mark. Dark Mark. How would Dark Mark change the experience of this character? And how would it change the Star Wars Phantom Menace experience? So the topic of this video, what I wanted to talk about, is the phenomenon of creating a character with negative space. If I had a character with a backstory, if I had a character with an arc, with lots of dialogue, if I had Dark Mark, then when I think Dark Mark, I think of a complex sum of parts and what emerges from that. A three-dimensional character, as people like to say. Put this character in one scene and I may see one side of him. He may act a certain way, he may feel a certain way. We might see him in a specific character relationship with specific dialogue, and that might relate to past scenes that are slightly different and future scenes that are different. This character is going to change and it's going to relate to how he changes, all these different parts, because this character is a composite entity. He exists as this multifaceted being whose internal variety gets expressed through all manner of different situations you put him in. Contrast that with Darth Maul. Contrast that with a character where we take a single characteristic and really make it strong, really emphasize it, and then we take everything else away. We take away backstory, we take away arc, we take away personality, we take away all dialogue. Then when I think about Darth Maul, what happens? Every single time I think about the character, I think deadly violence. Every scene the character is in, deadly violence. Every person the character interacts with, deadly violence. The sum total of what this character is a single powerful trait that whacks us in the face every second he's on screen. Darth Maul is pure, undiluted violence. He is bred entirely to hate. He is the dark side in that sense. He is that hate. He's purely this menace, and we love that about him. We rarely get such purity in what our villains are. It's not unheard of, but it's just very uncommon. It's very very rare. Square space. Add segue. Oh, that's a really bad one. So here's the situation. You are a ghost. You've reached the end of your mortal existence here on Earth, but you are not done making money. Why should you be? Capitalism ain't dead, am I right? Well, you are in luck because Squarespace is here to serve all your business needs, whether in this life or the next. Why haunt people for free when you can offer haunting one's enemies as a service that you can charge for? With Squarespace, you can make a calendar, you can set up appointments, or you don't even need to do the haunting. You can make threads, you can set up a protection racket. Squarespace makes it super easy to set up donations, either one time or recurring, so you don't even need to lift an ethereal finger. And on the topic of passive income, again, why spend your time devoted to haunting one poor soul when you can put in some hours ahead of time and make video content teaching other ghosts all your most effective haunting techniques and then sell it as an online course? With Squarespace, it is very simple to host video content for free or behind a paywall. You can charge subscriptions, whatever your greedy soul desires. And probably most important for a being who is not of this world is SEO. Make your ghost business findable by the living with the large variety of search engine optimization tools offered by Squarespace. And also, if you're, I don't know, like a living person too, I'm sure Squarespace is fine for that too. Either way, go to squarespace.com/schnee for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, use offer code schnee to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Back to the video. So anyway, I think this is the general approach to using one-dimensional characters, but I want to get more detailed here and elaborate on how this concept fits this particular story and its particular needs. And that begins with another question. If you're going to give a character 0 lines of dialogue, give them 0 lines of dialogue. Why does Darth Maul have like 2 lines? And to be clear, I don't put so much stake in the prequels. I'm looking for some like brilliant intentionality at that level, but I am looking for signs of what the experience is, how the character feels both in his silence and in these 2 lines. And here are the lines. It's like 2.5 lines actually. Number 1 is very practical.
Tatooine is sparsely populated. If the trace was correct, I will find them quickly, Master.
Number 3 or 2.5 is just this.
Yes, my master.
And yes, number 2, that is the interesting one.
At last we will reveal ourselves to the Jedi. At last we will have revenge.
So the way I see the story of The Phantom Menace is that it's very important that it starts with something that is so kind of brutally boring. And I really never liked this decision, but the fact is, the grand mythic epic adventure space opera of all time, Star Wars, starts with an economic dispute. It's a trade embargo, there's blockades, we need diplomacy, negotiations, ambassadors. It's this purposely mundane tangle of bureaucratic nonsense. And from within that boring but innocuous mess, an extraordinarily intelligent villain has quietly positioned himself for the most dramatic and terrifying rise to power in the history of the galaxy. And it's not just a villain, it's the type of evil this villain represents. He is a Sith Lord with a 1,000-year vendetta against the Jedi. He is not just grabbing power for himself, he is the dark side. He is the embodiment of disharmony and disconnect and hatred in the universe. It is old evil in its most basic fundamental form, wrapped in a shiny deceptive disguise. So this is the plot of the whole prequel trilogy, this ancient pure evil emerging on the complex galactic scene but cloaked in layers of deception. And what episode 1 does is mirror this dynamic in a pure form, almost a symbolic form as foreshadowing. Again, with episode 1 we have our complex mundane tangle of a sophisticated galactic society, and out of that emerges the simple pure evil as if from nowhere. Darth Maul wasn't just in hiding. What he is doesn't belong in times like these. Civilization has moved beyond that. We have progressed since we've had to worry about this kind of savagery. The characters themselves even express this exact shock.
My only conclusion can be that it was a Sith Lord.
Impossible. The Sith have been extinct for a millennium.
The theme of Star Wars, in my opinion, as I've talked about before, is that cosmic events are determined by the small-scale moral alignment of individuals. It's not the one who has the best targeting computer that succeeds in destroying the Death Star. It's the one who, in that moment, chooses to align himself with the harmony of every living thing. It's not the one with the biggest fleet who wins the galactic war. It's the love of a parent for their child. We have all these things: complexity, bureaucracy, the trappings of a sophisticated society and sophisticated culture, these things that make us feel safe. They make us feel like we're past worrying about the inner savagery and violence and evil inside of us. But it is a grim farce that we have moved beyond that. Just like the galaxy can be saved by one powerful decision by one individual to align with good, that can destroy what feels like the most invincibly terrifying complex construct of evil, literally of a cosmic scale. If we make the decision from a place of harmony with the universe, even a single individual can dismantle it. So too, pure evil can rear its ugly head again. Doesn't matter if it's just 1 or 2 individuals, and it can destroy the most invincibly safe civilization, despite all your fancy big worlds and big fancy council chambers and big fancy temples and big fancy political systems. With hatred and disharmony, even a single individual can dismantle it. And I think that's where the question of the duality of the Phantom Menace comes in. There's always been this question about who the Phantom Menace is, whether that term refers to Palpatine or to Darth Maul, and I think with this understanding it works to say that it's both. Palpatine is the real Phantom Menace of the prequel trilogy, and Maul is the foreshadowing Phantom Menace that we get in Episode 1. Palpatine has this whole long, complex, multi-step plot to take power in the galaxy, and it'd be easy to get lost in what that is and what the meaning of that is, and that's why we have Darth Maul to show us on a pure fundamental level what's actually happening. In both stories, at both scales, pure evil is coming out of nowhere in a society that felt safe from it. It's threatening everything built up by the good people. It's killing the good people, wiping them out. All of them except, well, Obi-Wan. He can survive at both scales. But anyway, going back to the original question, I think that explains the lines of dialogue that Darth Maul has. Without that dialogue, we have one thing we associate this character with, deadly violence. With an otherwise silent character like this, adding just a few lines of dialogue is like adding a few drops of food coloring to food. It's going to make a huge difference, but it's also not going to obscure what's already naturally there. We want to preserve that strong impact, but what little nudge can we give it by accenting it with just a few things to say? And what we see with what these lines are is just a little nudge towards this context that we've been talking about. At last we will have our revenge on the Jedi, and yes, Master, this is ancient revenge and unquestioning obedience. It's not just deadly violence, it's deadly violence of the Sith, of fundamental evil. So, to recap, negative space creates focus and it creates simplicity. And focus isn't just about attention, it's focusing the impact. With Darth Maul, everything funnels back to our single only channel this character provides for us. Everything is deadly violence. One-dimensionality can be boring, but it gets interesting once it becomes that strong. And it becomes interesting after enough things that don't usually lead there, lead there. And it doesn't have to be as extreme with Maul and his one thing. I just made a video about Reacher, and this is all over that characterization. You take away relationships, possessions, all the normal things of a normal life at all, and you're just left with a big, strong dude who wants justice every single time. And again, because that impact is so focused and because it keeps going back there every time, no matter what, we see that one-dimensionality become interesting again. And then the other point we talked about as far as the Phantom Menace per se, simplisticness here creates a contrast with the messiness of a safe, sophisticated civilization, these big fancy structures of order supposedly protecting us from the base savage evil like this. And also simplisticness is used here to symbolically tell a version of a story that's more fundamental. And that's not necessarily a thing most stories want, but Star Wars does want it. You do see this in a lot of other stories actually, but they use a much simpler tool for it. What you will see is a character in the story telling like a fable or a myth, or even just a meaningful anecdote. And what the writer's doing there is giving the audience a pared down version of the complex, bigger story so we can see what's happening on a more fundamental level. It's a similar use of negative space just for plot, not character. And I'm just going to throw out another point here, another way they use this one-dimensionality. Placing this kind of focused simplicity within the story creates really interesting relationships. And I don't mean relationships in terms of how the characters interact, but like on paper, how this thing compares and contrasts with what's around it. What Darth Maul is just so different from like Qui-Gon, who is a fighter but is much more of a philosopher, and we feel that difference really strongly and we get fantastic stakes that way. And then Darth Maul is actually very similar to Obi-Wan. They're both students, they're both trained warriors, and we get a great foil with a gap that gets frighteningly smaller when Obi-Wan reacts with rage to Qui-Gon's death. And then also Maul is just so completely different from young Anakin. We end up wondering in the back of our minds, how could we possibly believe that Palpatine's next apprentice could be this after this? It's great misdirection whether we do or don't know what's going to happen next. Emotionally it just positions it so well. So to conclude, Darth Maul is a one-dimensional character, and that is a taboo writing thing. We are told that that is not allowed. But what we've demonstrated today is a way that a character like this can function beautifully in a story that fits them. And this isn't the only way either. I'm sure there are tons of other types of one-dimensional characters out there, and there are tons of uses for them. And yes, these characters are simplistic in and of themselves, but think about like in a visual art, the effect of one simple, strong color against a complex background. There are uses for this kind of simplisticness. So once again, the rules are more like guidelines. Find what your story needs, and if it breaks the rules, then you better smash those rules to pieces, because that's what's going to make your story not just good, but unique. An opportunity to break rules is a privilege. It means your story has a huge chance of standing out because it gets to do something that few stories even could do, much less should do. Okay, we'll stop here. Subscribe. If you are wondering, yes, I have seen some of Clone Wars. I know canonically through that Darth Maul survives, and they do more with the character. We see his backstory, he has more lines, and he becomes more complex and probably more multifaceted. That is what the character became to a lot of Star Wars fans, but for years, this character was the face and the lightsaber and the deadly violence that radiated from that, pure and undiluted, with nothing else surrounding it. And that was something that I found pretty beautiful, something worth praising and expounding on and learning from. I'm going to be going back to Star Wars for a bit as far as content, so subscribe if you want to see more of that. I'm a little bit torn on whether to do more prequel content, because I don't like the prequels, but Episode 1 has always had a special place in my heart. It's really the only other piece of Star Wars media that I consider somewhat decent aside from 4, 5, and 6. I've always wanted to do a video about the pod race, or Qui-Gon, or I don't know, maybe there'll be something. And if you like this video, then consider supporting the channel on Patreon. Thank you so much to all of my patrons. I am indebted to each and every one of you, and all my regular subs and viewers as well. You guys are what allow me to live a life doing a career that I love, so thank you to all of you. That is all I got for now. Hope you all enjoyed, and thanks for watching.